This morning we are very blessed. We're reading from the Grantaraj, King of all Scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, entitled Prayers by Queen Kunti, Text 44. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Sutavacham
Sutavacham
Pritayetam Kalapadai Parinutta Kilodaya Manasa Mandam Jahasha Vaikunto Mohayan Iva Mayaya Shutovacha Pritaye Tankalapadai Marinuta Kilodaya Mandam Jahasha Vaikunto Mohayan Iva Mayaya Sutta said, Pritaya, by Prita Kunti, Itam, this, Kalapadai, by chosen words, Parinuta, being worshipped, Akila, universal, Udhaya, glorious, Mandam, mildly, Jahasha, smiled, Vaikunta, the Lord, Mohayan, captivating, Iha, like, Mayaya, is mystic power. Translation, Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Purport. Anything that is enchanting in the world is said to be a representation of the Lord. The conditioned souls who are engaged in trying to lord it over the material world are also enchanted by his mystic powers, but his devotees are enchanted in a different way by the glories of the Lord, and his merciful blessings are upon them. His energy is displayed in different ways, as electrical energy works in manifold capacities. Srimati Kunti Devi has prayed to the Lord just to enunciate a fragment of his glories. All his devotees worship him in that way by chosen words, and therefore the Lord is known as Uttam Shlok. No amount of chosen words is sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glory, and yet he is satisfied by such prayers, as the Father is satisfied even by the broken linguistic attempts of a growing child. The word Maya is used both in the sense of delusion and mercy. Herein, the word Maya is used in the sense of the Lord's mercy upon Srimati Kunti Devi. Oma Gyan Tivanandasya Ginangana Shalaka Choksulimilitam Jena Tasmai Sivurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishram Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Shwayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadante Shvapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shruta Uvacha Pratyetam Kala Padai Parinuta Kilodhaya Mandam Jahasya Vaikunto Mohayan Eva Mayaya. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile is as enchanting as its mystic power. So such a nice verse we have today. In this verse we hear how the Lord, Sri Krishna, is so much pleased with the heartfelt prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi. As you know, because you've been studying this chapter for 44 days, Queen Kunti spoke her famous prayers just after the battle of Kurukshetra. At that time, Krishna was preparing to go back to Dwarka, and Kunti Devi approached him as he was getting into his chariot. And with her folded palms, she revealed her heart to the Lord in the form of the famous prayers in this chapter. Prabhupada loved this chapter. He gave a series of lectures, actually, on this chapter, which have now been compiled into a book called the Teachings, I think, of Queen Kunti. So this prayer, generally we think of prayer as something in the Christian tradition, but actually this prayer is very much part of our Gaudiya Vaishnava, perhaps even more so. Prahlad Maharaj, he describes this prayer revealing its heart to Hari, Guru and Vaishnava in that famous verse in the 7th canto. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Shmaranam, Bhavasevanam, Archanam, Bandham, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Prayer is one of the 9 processes of devotional service. We're familiar with Shravanam, Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, but Bandhanam, prayer is also very important. It's the way that we go before the Vaishnava, we go before our spiritual master, we go before the Lord, and we reveal our heart of hearts, the deepest feelings of our hearts. Not those superficial things that kind of linger there because of the past. We have some material desires. Sometimes they're very powerful, sometimes very strong, but we know that's not our real interest. That's not who we really are. Jiver Supoya Nityadas. We are eternal servants of Krishna. That's who we are. That's what we're hankering to be. And the other desires that sometimes come like little bubbles, you see in the ocean, little bubbles come up from the silt at the bottom and they come up when they surface. So sometimes other things surface in our mind, like lust, anger, some greed. No, that's not who we really are. We don't want to express those feelings to the Vaishnavas. We don't want to open that part of our heart to our spiritual master. We don't want to open that chamber of our heart to the Lord. We want to go very deep to the essence of the soul, which is loving sentiments towards the Lord. What is the essential nature of sugar? It's sweet. What is the intrinsic nature of salt? It's salty. What is the intrinsic nature of water? It's wet. What is the intrinsic nature of the soul? To be an ecstatic lover of God. That's what we are in essence. So prayer is a way of revealing these sentiments towards Krishna. Bandhanam. Of course, in the beginning we don't have such love. We have some sentiment, I guess you could say. We have some affection. Eventually it turns into some bhav, some spontaneity. Guru Goswami says, just as young boys are attracted to young girls, or young girls are attracted to young boys, he said, in the same way, but in a transcendental way, let me be attracted to you in loving devotion. So it's there that, like in the beginning, when we first come to Krishna consciousness, we're so covered by the reflection, lust, we can hardly understand what is love. Sometimes we see it, we hear about it, but sometimes, under special occasions, we see it manifest in the body of a pure devotee of the Lord. Generally, pure devotees, they don't reveal their heart of hearts, they don't reveal their love for Krishna, they don't reveal their ecstatic symptoms because it may be misunderstood by the general mass of people. And the people will follow them for the wrong reasons, not for the knowledge they're giving, but just because of their some devotion that they... So the pure devotees, they don't show these loving sentiments, they try to keep it in, but sometimes it comes out. Like Jesus said, my cup overruns with love. Sometimes they just can't keep it in. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would actually, these symptoms of love of God, he would manifest them. One time we were sitting with Prabhupada in Paris, in France. He'd just come after a year or two away, and the previous visit he'd installed Radha Krishna deities, Radha Paris, Ishwar he named them. So he came and I remember he came into the room, and the way he was looking at the deities was so much different than the way I was perceiving the deities. I was seeing them as representatives of Krishna, but Prabhupada was seeing, here's the Lord himself. "O son of Maharaj Nanda, you are not a statue, you are directly the Lord himself," the Brahman says in Chaitanya Charitamrita Brahman. You are not a statue, you are the Lord himself. So Prabhupada was looking at Radha Krishna, there was so much spiritual emotion coming, and then he went and he sat on the Vyasasana, he started chanting, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janaballabha Giri Vadadari Gopi. And Prabhupada, he started shaking like this, and I thought, oh my gosh, my spiritual master's having a stroke. I was sitting right there, and then the kartals were trembling. All of a sudden, these tears gushing out of Prabhupada's eyes. It wasn't like he was just crying. He described it just flowing from his eyes like torrents of rain. He started crying. His uttari, his top piece was getting all wet from the tears. And I was sitting there, like I was seeing my spiritual master in his, Nitya Lila, his eternal Nitya Lila Seva, his eternal loving relationship with Krishna. Because he was singing about Radha Madhava in Vrindavan, and these symptoms were coming forth. So we were like, and it was like, it went on for a long time. And Prabhupada came out and said, chant Hare Krishna. What could we understand? These are very, very advanced symptoms, and difficult for those of us who are aspiring devotees to understand. But sometimes by seeing these things gives us faith, shraddha, to continue the process of devotional service. So we may not be able to reveal our heart of hearts yet because we don't really know what's in our heart, the deepest recesses of our heart. So we can repeat the prayers of pure devotees. We can learn these prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi. We can learn the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. We can learn the prayers of Maharaj Ambarish. We can learn the prayers of pure devotees. And by repeating those prayers and practicing devotional service, gradually, Chaitodharpana Marjana, the heart becomes cleansed. And one day, in some distant lifetime, we'll also be chanting Hare Krishna, and a tear of love of God will appear on our eye and come down our cheek. That is the perfection of Krishna consciousness. This is what we are hankering for, that we can't jump over. Do Shuddha Tata Sadhusanga to Bhajana Kriya Anarti Niviti Syat. We come into the association of devotees, we gain some faith. This is something unique, this is something special. I'm getting some relief from the burning nature of material life. Let me stay here. Bhajana Kriya, we take up the process of devotional service, rules and regulations, we take initiation, we serve the Guru like this, and then gradually, Chaitodharpana Marjanam. All the desires of the heart are purified, and then real devotion begins. One time Prabhupada said, devotion begins when the heart is completely freed of sex desire. So the heart has to be pure in order to understand what is bhakti. So right now we're just like little kids imitating the parents, like the children. How do you learn to talk? You hear your parents talking, and then mama, dada, kappa. I remember when I was in the Grihastha ashram, when my son was born, Gaur Shakti, then he grew up, and his first word was Babu Bud. We couldn't figure out what Babu Bud was. Babu Bud. And then when he got a little older, he was pointing to a picture of Prabhupada. Babu Bud. Oh, that's nice. He didn't say Mama or Papa. He said Babu Bud. When I was carrying him around the castle, the chateau at New Mayapur, Prabhupada was visiting. And Prabhupada he came to the window, and he was chanting and looking out the window. And my son was on my shoulders in his diapers. So we had some bad experiences sometimes. Showing his diapers. And he got, I don't know how old he was, but he couldn't speak yet, but I'd like hold him there. And then he saw Prabhupada. And he went, Prabhupada! So he got so excited. And Prabhupada waved to him. Prabhupada! So that night, in Darshan, Prabhupada was speaking, he said, yes, he said, these children in Krishna consciousness, he said, they're all devotees in their last lives. He said, today there was one little boy on the shoulders of his father, and he was waving at me like he was my old friend. So his mother, my former wife, she was in ecstasy. Like, what could a mother want? Her child to be a Rama Vishnu. But anyway, so Prabhupada was very kind like that. He was saying that there's some affection these children have for him, so like that. So the children, they learn the words from the parents. So we're like that. We're little children in Krishna consciousness, and we're following behind Guru and Krishna. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I'm simply running behind you, Gurudev, shouting Krishna, Krishna. What do we know about Krishna? But by constantly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The mercy of that powerful sound vibration is that it destroys to ashes all the sinful reactions that are sitting there like a heavy burden in the heart. It uproots those strong material desires, the attachments we have to this world, and throws them to a distant place. And one day, that Maha Mantra awakens that prema, that love that is there within the heart. So, sadhan bhakti means literally devotional service and practice. We're practicing to be devotees. Actually, we should understand where we're at in Krishna consciousness. We're just practitioners. And when that practice purifies the heart and awakens from bhava, we come to Raganut Bhakti, where we're doing things not out of duty, but we're doing out of genuine affection for the Lord. And that's not the perfection. That affection has to turn into ecstatic love. The next step. Sometimes the Gaudiyas say that your first birth is as a sadhaka. Next birth, you're Raghunuga. And third birth, you have prema. Although that's very liberal, because Krishna says, Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatmasya Virmabha. After many, many births, one who's in actual knowledge of me fully surrenders to me. So it may take 3 births, it may take 100 births, you may get some Guru Kripa, you may get some Krishna Kripa. Sometimes it happens, the Lord gives some special mercy in one lifetime. But anyway, it doesn't matter how long it takes, at least we're on the right path. We may be advancing slowly on the path of devotion, but better to be going slow in the right direction than to be going hell-bent for leather, as the karmis sometimes say, in the wrong direction. They're making so much advancement, but where are they going? Matirna Krishna Pratasvato Bhava. Prahlad Maharaj says, because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted towards sense gratification, towards material enjoyment, are gradually gliding down towards hellish conditions. Neither their own efforts or the combined efforts of others can save them. So we're fortunate. We're a little impatient, because as life goes on and we get older, we look how much time we have left, and we're hankering, will I achieve perfection in this lifetime? But that lowliness is good for us. So we have to learn these prayers. Prabhupada said we should study these books carefully. We should learn these shlokas, and then we can repeat them. And by repeating them, we get a sense of what we're supposed to be hankering for. Not that we maintain material attachments after hearing so many instructions on the matter. Not after 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. We're hankering for the same nonsense that we've hankered for millions of lifetimes. What is the use? It doesn't work. It's like if I sit down and I start to speak and this microphone's not working. I can fiddle with it for a moment, but then, we should change it. But I go on, just wait, Prabhus, and then, after 2 hours, 2 days, 2 months, 2 years, 2 lifetimes, I'm still. Well, if it doesn't work, then find an alternative. So does material life work? There's a semblance of work, but does it give that shantushti? Does it give that satisfaction that we're hankering for? No. Where do you get that satisfaction? Savaya pumsha paradharmo yato bhaktir adoksaje. Aitakiya pratiyata yayatma shrupashitati. Shukadeva Goswami says very clearly, the supreme occupation for all mankind, now they say humankind, they won't leave the ladies out. They say like that now. The supreme occupation for all humankind is that by which one can attain to the loving service of Krishna. Ahaitakiya pratiyata. But that service, that religion, you can say, it can't be kaitava dharma, it can't be cheating religion, so full of some selfish desires. It has to be a haitakiya pratiyata, it has to be unmotivated, uninterrupted. If you serve Krishna like that, yayat mahashvipashidati, you gain full satisfaction. So we are following in the footsteps of these types of devotees, so we learn their prayers. And we make that the hankering of our heart. We gradually make that the hankering of our heart. We don't approach the Lord with bandhanam for something mundane. That's actually, in the Christian tradition, they say, don't use God's name in vain. You're calling, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Yes, and some dhanam, some janam, some sundarim. Yes, give me some dhanam, janam, sundarim. Give me some money, honey. It's so sweet, can't be beat. Give me some beautiful wife, some very handsome husband. He can also be Krishna conscious. Now, give me some pratishta. This is very dangerous. To make some advancement and then capitalize on that by becoming famous and getting, that's dangerous. Nandanam najanam nasundarim kavicham bhadikadisha kamai. Mama Janmani Ishwar Bhavatat Bhakti Ahaitikvi. Hey Lord, Mama Janmani, I don't even want liberation. I don't want mukti if it's without devotion. If I get liberated but I have no devotional service, I don't want that. I just want to be your humble servant, life after life, if you want. This is what the devotee is praying for. We don't take the Lord's name in vain. We don't use God's name for some material purpose. We don't pray like that. Like once there was an innocent cowherd boy, he walked into some shop, and when he walked in, he heard the word, Gopal! This is a very Krishna conscious shop. Then he heard, Madhusudan! Then he heard, Hari! Oh, I like this shop. Usually when you do go to the shop, when you go to the shopping mall, you do in the parking, you have to tolerate all this nonsense music, right? You have your iPod in one ear, and you're having a conversation with the person you distribute the books to. But you can't tolerate all this nonsense music to have. It's part of the tolerance of being a Sankirtan devotee. But this boy, he walked into the supermarket, and they were saying, Gopal, Madhusudan, Hari. This was very nice. But actually what was happening is these shopkeepers were very deviant. They had these kind of code words. Gopal meant, when the person came in, oh, he looks like a simpleton, a simple cowherd boy. He's a simple guy. Madhusudan. But he has some money, so Madhusudan means the husband of the goddess of fortune. He's got money. Hari. Hari means he who takes everything away. So take all the money away from this innocent cowherd boy. That's what the code they were using. They were nasty men. Gopal means a simple guy. Madhusudan, but he's got money. Hari. Hari is the name of Krishna. It means take everything away from him. So we don't want to use God's names like that. No. We want to use His names for expressing our love and begging for service. What are we doing when we chant? We're chanting. We're not finishing our 16 rounds. I'm sorry. That's not what we're doing. When we sit down and chant, what are we doing? We're beggars. We're beggars. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram. Oh Lord, oh energy of the Lord, Srimati Radhika, Please, once again, let me take up your devotional service. Like every mantra, then service, 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 service. One time Prabhupada gave a lecture, I often use this. He was giving a lecture about the Holy Name in Boston, Massachusetts, in America. And afterwards, the one guest, he said, "But Swamiji, why? We're always saying the same thing over and over and over, Hare Krishna. Like, what does it mean anyway?" So Prabhupada, he spoke differently that day. He said, "What does it mean, Hare Krishna? It means, my friend, my friend, my friend." This is what we're begging Krishna. So you have to focus on that. You can't say something and then think of something else. Like if I'm speaking to Prabhu here and then my mind is wandering someplace else, I'm not going to take the conversation very seriously. And we're speaking and my mind's drifting. Hello? I'm like, we're talking, right? Like, what are you thinking about? Oh, excuse me. So when you chant, you have to focus. It's not a mechanical process. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And it's heartfelt prayers. This is why this chapter is so important. It's heartfelt prayers. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama. At least as much devotion as we can muster. Well, I don't have much devotion. Well, at least be grateful that you've been delivered from material existence. That you know. You may not know yet what are these sentiments of love for Krishna, but you know that you've been saved from the material life. That you know. You've been delivered. Rupa Goswami prays in Padavali. He says, "My dear Lord, here I am, drowning in the fathomless whirlpool of material existence. Lord, just this one time, please extend your hand to save me." So when that Lord's hand extends, it's not like his long arm that comes. No, he sends his representatives, the Vaishnavas. And by their mercy, their association, we are delivered to the lotus feet of Krishna. So if we have experienced that mercy of being delivered from the sinful life of material, then we can also have some affection when we're chanting Hare Krishna. We're thankful, yes. That's only 50%. The next part's really nectarian. Bhav. There's Nishta, there's Ruchi, there's Bhav. Those things are awaiting us in Krishna consciousness. So Kunti Devi's prayers are very instructive to us. Especially I like her second to the last prayer in her prayer. She says, "Twayi me nanya vishaya matir maru pate shukrit ratim udva hatad adha gangavo gangudanvati." O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges river flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Such a nice prayer. This doesn't exclude other living entities, of course, but one sees them in relationship to Krishna. He sees living entities not as British and Scottish and American and German. He sees them all as Krishna's devotees. But that exclusive devotion for Krishna is being expressed by Kunti Devi. And because she has that mood of selfless love for the Lord, she's always Krishna conscious. Prabhupada he defined this, he quoted that famous verse, Smartavya Shatatam Vishnur Vishmartavyo Najatujit, that one should always remember Krishna and never forget him. This is what we want. We always want to remember Krishna, and we never want to forget Krishna. That's the goal of Krishna consciousness. That's all the result of all the rules and regulations, that we'll always remember Krishna and we'll never forget Krishna. How much time do you remember Krishna every day? We say in Russian, chut chut. Or Hindi, toda toda. Or English, little little. We can gauge our Krishna consciousness by how often are we thinking of Krishna? We're struggling to think of Krishna, that we should be thinking of Krishna all the time. When I was in Australia, one boy had a t-shirt that said, he was walking towards me, "Always remember Krishna." Well, that's a cool t-shirt. And he walked by and I looked at the back of the t-shirt and said, and never forget him. Oh, I want a t-shirt like that. So it's not easy. How do you always remember Krishna, never forget him? It's difficult because our minds are so absorbed in material life. Perhaps another verse is more pertinent to us. Shota vyatini rajendra rinam shanti shahasha shaha apashyatam atmatatmam gyanatu griha medinam. Shukadeva Goswami tells Maharaj Parikshit. Those who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have so many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. Isn't it true? There's so many things. You open up the newspaper. We were flying from London up here to Glasgow, and I looked around. Every single person without exception, except for Gouranga and Rajeshwari and Dominic. Everyone had a newspaper. They had 2 or 3 newspapers. They would read one newspaper, then they would put it down, and they'd read the other newspaper. But it was the same thing. It was the same day's newspaper, 3 different newspapers. Puna punas, charvita, charvananam. This is called chewing the chew. You chew it, you put it down, another thing, chew it. I couldn't believe it. And they'd read one newspaper, then they'd go back and they'd read the article again. I was feeling so sorry for them. Because it was such garbage. Especially they have, what do you call in this part of the world? Tabloids. You know, I mean, newspapers are bad enough in America and other places. But my gosh, these tabloids, it's just junk. But these poor people, they're drawn into it, it becomes part of their life, and they can't live without it. It's like an addictive drug. They can't live without this prajalpa. But devotees should avoid it like the plague. Avoid it like the plague. Lord Chaitanya told Raghunath Das Goswami, he gave him instructions as a renunciate, but because we're all in the process of renouncing this world, those instructions are valid for us. He said, don't hear what common people talk about, and don't repeat it to others. Don't dress in a fancy way, and don't eat too opulent of food. And in your heart of hearts, always think about the Lord's, Radha and Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. This is his instructions. I listened to a tape the other day, and Prabhupada said to one reporter. The reporter was asking about this movie, and Prabhupada said, I don't know about this movie. He said, you'll never find my disciples at a movie. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, how times have changed. My son was telling me the other day, he said, now you can download movies from the internet onto your computer. I said, I don't even want to hear it. I said, don't even mention it. I said, but you should know, Peter, that you can download these movies from the internet. You know, something Broadway or something, I don't know. Some facilities there. I said, oh my gosh, how Kali Yuga is advancing. But this acts like a poison in our hearts. And you may not, just like when they kill, sometimes they give a little bit of poison and then they put a little more poison. You don't drop dead immediately because then they would know, oh, someone has poisoned him, let us find. But the cook, he puts a little arsenic in there, and then you get in a little more. Then gradually you get sick, and then you die. So this Gramya Katha, this village talk, now it's called global talk, but it's the same nonsense. Very dangerous for the heart, and we should avoid it. And we should just struggle to open up the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Because if you take an inch, then they'll give you a mile. If you give an opening to Maya, she'll take advantage of it. It's like, you know, in boxing, then in boxing you have to like protect this is the solar plexus here. It's one of the easiest spots when you punch somebody, right? They're guarding their face, but sometimes their arms are like this. You just hit them in the solar plexus and they're down. You lose your wind. So if you leave a little opening, then Maya will take advantage. You give her an inch, she'll take a while. No problem. So we have to be very strict. But there's no question of being overly strict in Krishna consciousness. We have to be very careful to guard ourselves like that. So the best thing is to not just to think about that, but to not be reactive, but to be proactive. Proactive means I don't have to think about being reactive, because kirtaniyat sada hari. Trinadapi sunichana torapi shahishtana amanina manadena kirtaniyat sada hari. Recommended. Constantly be chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're serving the holy names because we can't. We're not bhajananandis all day long. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But by the grace of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, according to our capacity as administrators, as farmers, as mothers, as frontline preachers, we're all assisting Prabhupada and Gaur Nitai in the distribution of the holy names. If you're not chanting, be active in service to the holy name. Essentially, this whole movement is meant to inform people of one thing. Mahaprabhu, he took some prasad from Sukumbhara Brahmachari. He was a cook, Sukumbhara. Mahaprabhu was very pleased, very satisfied with that prasadam. So the devotees were there, so he turned around and began preaching to the devotees about that verse from the Brihad Narayan Purana. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Eva Kevalam, Kalo, Nashdeva, 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 Bhaktinanadva. That in this age of Kali, there's no more effective means of becoming Krishna conscious than by chanting the Lord's holy name. There's no other way, no other way, no other way. Essentially, this is our message. If a person were just to sit down and for the rest of his life chant Hare Krishna, his life would become perfected. That is our message. So if you can't chant all the time, at least chant a lot of the time. If you can't chant a lot of the time, chant some of the time. If you can't chant some of the time, chant choo-choo. At least chant one round. Don't give up. Don't give up the fight. Stand up, fight. Just keep that link with Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Because eventually that chanting is so powerful, it will awaken that turbulent rasa, that love that's there in your heart. It will happen. And then you'll be able to remember Krishna all the time. There's two ways that you can always remember someone. If you love them, and if you hate them. If you love someone, you can think about them all the time. We have some little bit of experience like that in the material life, right? Of course, some of you don't know what is material life. You were born into this movement. You are most fortunate. But others of us, we were products of Kali Yuga. So we have some of these experiences of mundane relationships, and then you're always thinking of the other person. But it's not perfect because it's perverted. So what's an example of, well, let's take an example of someone who hated Krishna. What's a good example of someone who hated Krishna? Kamsa. Kamsa, he was taking his sister on after her wedding on the chariot back home, and he heard a voice from the sky. You fool! Comes? Don't you know that the 8th child of your sister will be your death? He brought the chariot to the stomach. This is something, it's not like, he read it in the newspaper. It's a voice, oracle coming from the sky. Everybody heard it. Kamsa, you fool. Like how often do you hear a voice from the sky? Don't you know that the 8th child of your sister will be the source of your death? What? Took her hair, took out a sword. Ready to kill his own sister. This is a demon. And not hesitate to perform the most horrible crime to protect their selfish interests. You'd never be surprised, but they killed their own children. We think, how can Kamsa kill his sister? Well, how you can kill your own child? Sometimes, not often, 60 million children are killed every year. They kill their own. The child takes shelter in the womb of the mother, and she kills So don't be surprised. Ready? And then Vasudeva said, but wait, let's talk some philosophy here. Don't you know that if you do this, people will look ill upon you? You're the king, killing a sister. Kamsa said, yeah, that's probably that's true. Yeah. So don't worry, it's the 8th one, so, I'll give you, every time the child's born, you can come and look at it. All right, give me the 8th. So, but the point was that was a very powerful prophecy. It's something very powerful. So he was always thinking about this 8th child. He became like a phobia for him, just Krishna, 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 Krishna. He used to have these dreams that, he was being dragged in a cart by 12 donkeys, which is the way that they would bury people, to take the body to the graveyard. He was seeing all these things, day and night. He was always remembering Krishna, and he never forgot him. Oh, he's a Mahajan, number 13. There's 12 Mahajans, he's number 13. He's setting an example how to remember Krishna and never forget him. But no. Rupa Goswami says, yes, he's always thinking of Krishna, never forgetting him. But he adds to that a very important thing, that it has to be done favorably. Anibilasita sunyam, jnana karma navitam, anukalena krishna shilanam bhaktir uttama. This is the Paribhasha Sutra. Sutra means the verse. It's the seed verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's the verse in which all the other verses are evolving, developing. Like, what is the seed verse for Srimad Bhagavatam? It comes in the first canto. Ete shamsa kalopumsha krishnashtu bhagavan swayam indriya vyakalam lokam pridayamde juge juge. We quoted that yesterday. That all the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of plenary portions. But Krishnashtu bhagavan swayam. Krishna is the original, supreme, most worshipable personality of Godhead. And then all the verses of the Bhagavatam evolve from that seed verse. So what is the seed verse of Nectar of Devotion? Anuvilasita sunyam, jnana karma navitam, anukalena krishna, shilanam bhakta uttama. That verse should be etched within your heart. That is the foundation of Krishna consciousness. From that, understanding that verse, we begin to make progress. We know where we're going. We know who we are. We know where we're going. Yes, because of that verse. When first-class devotional service develops, one is devoid of all material desires, impersonal knowledge, and fruitive action. The devotee serves Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. That's pure devotion. So that's how we want to think of, we don't want to hate Krishna and follow the footsteps of Kamsa. We don't want to follow the footsteps of Hiranyakashipu. We saw what happened to him. Yeah, he worked very hard. Yoga, siddhis, so forth, and he got these mystic powers, he got benediction. It looked like, there was that song, remember? I want it all, I want it now. Yeah, that's Hiranyakashipu. He had everything. The Bhagavatam says he still wasn't happy because his uncontrolled senses, his senses weren't happy. Although he had everything, his material senses were never satiated. They wanted more and more and more and more. So we don't want to follow. You have to look. This is the intelligence. There's a little bit of a mystic power in your intelligence. Everyone has some mystic powers. One mystic power, you can see into the future. So with your intelligence, you can see in the future that if you follow the path of Privritti Marg, you're doomed to destruction. There's two paths. There's Privritti Marg and there's Nivritti Marg. Privritti Marg means the path of sense gratification. And Nivritti Marg means the path of gradually renouncing this world, culminating in devotion to Krishna. What is the result of Privritti Marg? And what is the result of Nivritti Marg? You have to work hard on both paths. To get ahead in this world, you've got to work hard. You see how the students, especially today, They have homework. They have 4 hours of homework when they're 5 years old. Nowadays, it's such a competitive society. I see the kids have to study so hard. And you have to work hard in Krishna consciousness. This movement's not for lazy people. But what is the result? When we were kids, we used to say, you take the high road, I'll take the low road, you'll go to heaven, and I'll go to hell. Yeah. You follow the path of Pravritti Mar, sense gratification, you're doomed from the beginning. But if you take up the path of Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of great devotees, the Mahajans, not the 13th imaginary one, the 12 Mahajans, then your success is guaranteed. So, Kunti Devi is such a nice example of a devotee who was always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna, because her devotion never wavered. Sometimes people are really devoted, but then there's some difficult times and they lose faith, they get full of doubts, they lose their enthusiasm. But Kunti Devi, she's so Krishna conscious that even in the midst of the greatest calamity, her love never wavers. Chanakya Pandit says that you can test a servant in the discharge of his duty. You test a citizen in time of war, right? Because in the wartime they have to everything has to go to the front lines to the soldiers, so the people back home had to live a kind of austere life. My mom was telling me that during World War II, they couldn't use petrol, they couldn't drive anywhere, they had to walk everywhere. There was no milk, there was no butter, because there was a war going on, so all the surplus was going to the front lines. So you test a citizen. If he's a good citizen, he doesn't stand up and complain, but I'm not getting enough butter. Hey, it's the time of war. Just, think of the troops, think of the boys, the front lines. You test a relative in time of misfortune, right? That, there's some difficulty and there's not so much pay, and the wife is saying, I only have 16 bangles. I want 18 bangles. Other girls have 18 bangles. I want Devi, time's a little difficult now, so I can't provide everything, so you just shanti, generate. You test a wife in times of misfortune. You can also test a devotee, how much faith, shraddha, they have during times of misfortune. Look at Kunti. Her and her 5 sons, went through so many trials and tribulations. Nevertheless, their devotion to the Lord didn't waver. In fact, in that adversity, they became more dependent on Krishna. Instead of times get difficult and then they take shelter in intoxication and illicit sex. No. Difficult times, I'll maintain my vows. And I'll increase my chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Sometimes Krishna puts his devotees in difficult situations to test their devotion. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, the road to Braj is strewn with thorns and brambles. Like you do Govardhan Parikrama, you go on the path, you're going to complete the Parikrama? Oh yeah, just take out the thorn and keep... So sometimes we meet adversity, we meet tragedy in Krishna consciousness. We shouldn't lose faith. We shouldn't be surprised. It's just a test from Krishna. He wants, like the fire, we call that the fire of ordeal. Like gold. You put gold in fire, it comes out richer. Because the impurity is 9 karat, 18 karat, 22 karat. What's the best gold? 24 karat. So gold goes through a heating process and it comes out more pure. So we have to expect that in the process of Krishna consciousness, we're going to have some difficulties. We can't pick and choose. Well, I'd like to have that difficulty. I don't want that one. No. You get what the Lord wants to give you. He knows. Sometimes He gives, Lord giveth, Lord taketh away. Like for Dhruva, He gave him everything. He gave him a planet. He gave him the pole star. Dhruva said, hey Lord, after getting this pole star, I can realize it's really not such a great thing. Your association is actually what I'm hankering for. I was looking for broken pieces of glass. In your association, Lord, I have found a valuable jewel. That's how the Lord dealt with Dhruva. He gave him everything. For Bali Maharaj, he came as a little dwarf boy. God became a dwarf. And he was cute. The little children, they can come in, who's going to say something? If some adult comes in and starts speaking, it's a disturbance. Little child comes in, oh, it's cute, sit down. I was giving a lecture at the manor, and right at the beginning, this elderly man walked in. This is Swamiji, I'm very happy to be here today to hear your katha. Please give me a seat. I was like, I lost my train of thought, you know. Then some little kid comes in. Oh, take a seat. So little children, they can go anywhere and everywhere. No one complains. Right? So the Lord became dwarf, and he came into the big assembly of Bali Maharaj. Prabhu, can I have something? Oh, yes, you're a little Brahmin boy. What do you want? I'll give you. I only want 3 steps of land. Take it. He became Trivikaram. He became Trivikaram. He took the 3 steps of the universe. First step, he covered the whole universe. He took everything. And Bali was just laughing. Krishna, you're so amazing. I wouldn't have given it voluntarily because you're asking me. It's all yours. It's all yours anyway. He was actually a great devotee, but he was covered at that time. So we have to be ready for whatever test. And the tests are sometimes, test means test. It's difficult. But we should never lose faith. We should try to see what is Krishna trying to teach me through all this. That through thick and thin I will remain devotee. So that was Kunti. It's such a nice story. Whatever it was, Rakshasas, poison cake, you know. Krishna, what are you doing? No, Krishna, help. Rakhe Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rakhe Ke. If Krishna wants to kill you, well, that's it. Your number's up. No one can save you. And if Krishna wants to save you, the whole, you know, it's a whole army. I was going to say Scotland, but I think it's the United Kingdom. The whole army of the United Kingdom tries to kill you. Just sit there. Rakhe Krishna Mare Ke. But you have to have faith. You can't do it. Hiranyakashipu had subjugated the demigods, just try to understand. And he was trying to kill Prahlad. He conquered Devatas, the great Kartikeya, the great fighter. But he's trying to kill some innocent boy. He couldn't do it. Because Prahlad has so much Shraddha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. The Gurukul melody. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The snakes and the elephant threw him off a cliff. But he had something. His father said, "Where is this God? If he's everywhere, is he in this pillar?" Oh yeah, he's in. You're going to see him in about 2 seconds. That form had never been seen before. No one had ever seen the form of Narahari Rupa. But when Prahlad saw that form, he went, "Wow, that's a nice form of God. I'm going to kill my daddy." He had so much faith that he'd never seen this form of Vishnu. Vishnu would never manifest. He manifested as a tortoise. He manifested as a fish, as a rock. But according to Bhagavatam, no one had ever seen that form of God. He came to, "Wow, I like that form." Namaste Narasimha. And he watched. Wow, you're so amazing, Krishna. The devotee has so much Shraddha, so much faith. So that's Kunti. You understand how advanced the devotee is by how much faith they have in Hari Guru, Vaishnava. So more evidence is given to the devotion of Kunti, actually. She's a very interesting personality. You could do a course on Kunti. Oh, Prabhupada, there's a book, The Teachings of Queen Kunti. It's such an important chapter. More evidence is given of the nature of her devotion, how she was always able to remember Krishna and never forget him in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. There, Sanatana Goswami recounts how on one occasion in Mathura, Krishna asked Akura to go to visit the Pandavas in Hastinapur, because the Pandavas were beginning to experience, the harassment of Duryodhana and everybody like that. So Krishna said to Akura, go to Hastinapur, see how they're doing. So while visiting them, Akura met with Kunti. A lot of things were going on. So Akura, I want to meet Kunti. Can you imagine? You can meet Kunti. Akura, he met with the Kunti. And Sanatana Goswami says in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita that as soon as Akura just mentioned Krishna's name, ecstatic symptoms of love of God began to manifest on the body of Kunti. He just said, Krishna. This is devotee. Like sometimes we have some nostalgia. We remember something and it brings forth some tears to our eyes, right? We'll think of, well, hopefully nothing mundane. When I was a kid, when I was flying, and I was mentioning when I was flying into London the other day, the people around were talking, they were talking, I'll go to see Big Ben. They were saying, Big Ben, Big Ben, it's a clock. We're going to take a ride on the Thames River on a boat. That dirty river? We'll go to Buckingham Palace, and maybe we'll see the Queen. The Queen? But I was thinking, when I was remembering how in 1971 I flew into London with Prabhupada on the plane. I was thinking like that. That's how I was thinking of London. How in 1971 I was accompanying Prabhupada from New York to London. And I told the story how Prabhupada's bag got lost in the passage. I had to stay back and get the bag for Prabhupada and stay in Heathrow Airport for 2.5 hours. I got the bag, I put it in the taxi, we went to the temple, Prabhupada had already given his lecture, and the kirtan was over, and the feast was over, and I walked in with a bag, and I asked the brahmacharis, are they prasadam left, who are you? No, I just came on the plane with Prabhupada, and had to get this bag, and sorry, Prabhu. Can you help me carry the bag upstairs? I'm really full. I can't move. I said, thanks guys, and I carried the suitcase, cursing the suitcase. Suitcase. Then I got to Prabhupada's room, and then I knocked on the door, and there was no answer, so I just opened the door and walked in backwards. And then the Kumar said, watch out, you're going to bump into Prabhupada. I turned around, there was Prabhupada. His gumshoe, paid obeisances. All of a sudden, my back, Prabhupada slapped me so hard right here. I told the devotee, if I ever got a tattoo, I would tattoo the outline of Prabhupada's hand. What kind of tattoo is that? Prabhupada was the best tattoo. And then Prabhupada said something, he walked away, and then I've told the story so many times, but it's so much nectar. That, I hope I can remember this at the time of death. But then, I got up and I said, wow. And the devotee said, Prabhupada slapped you on the back. He said, I never saw Prabhupada do that before. I said, yeah, I fell. And I said, what did Prabhupada say? And Prabhupada said, so much endeavor in the material world. But when I take you back to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. So, that was so nice. I often remember that. Time gets difficult, and I think, okay, so much endeavor in the material world, but when Prabhupada takes us back to Godhead, everything's going to be easy and very sublime. So this was the thoughts I was having as I was coming into London. People were thinking other things, but these experiences in Krishna consciousness, they are gradually awakening our love for Krishna. One day, it won't just be a moment of nostalgia. When we become pure devotees, we'll be thinking of Krishna in ecstatic love all the time. I can tell you that Prabhupada's eyes were always full of tears. It's something that we all remarked even in the beginning years. Prabhupada, when you looked at Prabhupada, his eyes were brimming with tears. They didn't come, but it was something amazing. He was always, one time he told us, he said, never was there a time when I forgot the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. So Kunti was like that. So when Kunti just heard Krishna's name, just the surge of love, of sentiments came. When oh when will that day be mine? Narottam says like that. When will we come to the point when we hear Hare Krishna and it just, oh, Hare Krishna. When we hear Krishna's name, Krishna. Now we hear something, football, cricket, oh yes. We hear, no. When Bhivamangal Thakur says, now that I'm enjoying this ever-fresh ras with Krishna, whenever I think how I enjoy sex in this material world, I spit at the thought. Because that's the epitome of material enjoyment. You can't get better than that. If that's better, if that's best, if that's anything. That's the essence of material enjoyment. So he said, whenever I think how as a young man I used to enjoy with the prostitute Chintamani, now that I'm enjoying this ras with Krishna, when I think of that, which was so important to me at that time, Prabhupada said, I spite. Prabhupada's English. I spite at the thought. God had his own vocabulary. So when will that time when we get these thoughts in our mind? Oh, Hare Krishna. He's thinking, Narottam's praying, when oh when will that day be mine? I think maybe it's Bhakti Vinod, one of our acharyas is saying, when oh when will that day be mine? When I like Kunti, when will it be? You should set some deadline in management, women manager. You don't procrastinate forever with your duties. You have a deadline. I want to be Krishna conscious by the time I die. Oh yes. When will you die? Oh, when I'm 75. Yes. Prabodhananda Saraswati says in his Vrindavan Mahimamrita, giving us the hankering to go to Braj, he says, do not infants also die in their childhood? Run to Vrindavan, he says, and take shelter of Radha Shamsundar. This should be our mood. Prahlad said to his friends, you should all become Krishna conscious. What are you doing? Throwing spit wads and, doing this kind of thing, Grow up. Well, Prahlad, we're only 5. Come on, we're 5. What do you expect? We'll become Krishna conscious when we're old. So the guru has to be more intelligent than the disciple, otherwise how is he guiding him? So he said, okay, old age means just before you die. You could die today. You may be old men right now. Guru means heavy. Sadhu means literally one who cuts our attachments to this world. Not who flatters us, but goes deep and cuts the attachment. So Prahlad speaking and his friends like 5 years old, okay, we'll start chanting now. We'll start chanting now. So, at what point will you become Krishna conscious? If you knew you were going to die tomorrow, how would you live your life? But we're thinking, ahanyahani bhutani. Every moment, millions of living entities are going to the kingdom of death, but I think I'm going to be here permanently. You don't really think like that, but you're acting like that. Because so much time is wasted. Or the quality of the time is not right. If you knew, just like I had this experience a couple of weeks ago, Friday the 13th, I went in for a normal checkup. Just because every time I'm in South Africa, there's lots of doctors who are devotees, so you get a free checkup. So I thought I was in good health, I can dance in the kirtan, and I've got a good appetite. I thought I'm in good health. So I went in, and the doctor's just, going in, he's on my back, he went, oh my God. Thinking, the doctor's, he made a mistake actually, because doctors are not supposed to talk like that. He said, oh my God. And then there was another doctor who said, come here, look at this. And they're looking at my back. I'm thinking, oh my God, what if I've got a vertebrae out of, whack or something? He said, get the dermatologist down here immediately. So I could hear them. They went to a room and I heard them say melanoma. I don't know if you know anything. Melanoma is the most dangerous type of skin cancer. It's very aggressive and it's almost always fatal. It's what our dear godmother, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, passed away from, melanoma. And the doctor came back, he said, do you spend a lot of time in the sun? I said, well, you know, we have this saying, endless summer, that when it gets cold in the northern hemisphere, I always go south, Africa. He said, how long have you been doing that? I said, oh, well, since I was 14. I used to go to Mexico and surf, and, you know, I go to the camp. Oh, I said, you were a surfer? He said, uh-oh. I said, uh-oh, what? I said, well, you know, we think that you have a melanoma on your back. And, you know, usually doctors don't say that, but he said later it was so advanced. He said that, you know, he was convinced 85% it was melanoma. So, because it appears like a black mole in your back, and it's the kind of way it grows. So he said, we're going to send this to the lab. He said, but, you know, we should start talking about chemotherapy now and radiation. And suddenly my whole life changed. I was thinking, because I went on the internet when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj got his melanoma, and I learned all about it, because I'd also been in the sun a lot, so I was, you know. And I learned that at stage 4, even stage 3, when it grows in a certain way, the doctors, you know, okay, they give you the chemo, but they know. So I thought, you know, I thought that it was over. I really did. And I actually sat down that night and I wrote a letter to my disciples. And it was a long letter, and I just, you know, I said, well, we have to accept this is how life is, and, you know, we all prepare to die, and you have my blessings, continue your service, and be faithful followers of Iskcon, and never leave. And I had this whole letter prepared, and I wrote my friends, dear Shiva Maharaj, dear Govinda Maharaj, you know. And I was going to go to Vrindavan. I had this idea. I wanted to ask the GBC, I don't know if I should say this, but I wanted to ask the GBC to take Babaji, because sannyas carries with it so many designations. Like, usually you take sannyas to get away from all of that. But, you know, for preaching we have, you know, our cloth, and we have our facility, we have our computers, and we have our cars, and we have, you know, you have name and fame, and this is all very dangerous, actually. You have to be able to use it without, Bengali proverb, to catch the fish without getting wet. So we have so much facility, but we may identify, so Babaji means nothing, just a loincloth around your waist. And there's a precedent set, because my godbrother Udalami, I remember in the 70s, he got cancer, and Prabhupada gave him Babaji, Udalami Das Babaji. It's the only time in our movement that someone got Babaji. But Prabhupada gave it because he wanted that devotee to go to Braj and just take full shelter of Radha and Krishna, with just the name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. So I was thinking, yes, I have so much facility, and this name, fame, it's very dangerous, so I just want to go to Braj and sit under a tree somewhere, and maybe with one servant, one attendant, you know, and a loincloth, and just give my heart to the holy name and die like that. Like, even die like so no one knows I'm dead. Like in Vedic culture, a man would go to the forest and he would just die. That was it. So I was thinking like this, you know, maybe I'll write a letter to the executive committee and see if I can become Babaji, you know. I just try to, because at one point, of course, Prabhupada, he served to the end, but, you know, he was Prabhupada, so his preaching was so effective. What would my preaching do the last 6 months? So I thought I'll go with it. I had this all prepared. And, you know, anything I had, everything just like, suddenly the color faded, like a cloth, you put it in the sun, and it fades. Everything that, you know, only thing was just Radhe Shyam, Shri Vrindavan Dham. I was thinking like that. So then, but it was a struggle, you know, it wasn't easy. So, I'm going to see my friends again, I won't have this, and I was thinking, boy, I have to really use, you know, the last part of the race, come into a second wind, get into the fast lane, move over to the fast lane, really become Krishna conscious now. So that was Friday, and then by Sunday morning, my mind was reeling, you know. I hadn't sent the letter yet, let me get the lab results. So I told the doctor, I said, look, do I have to wait till Monday? Can't you give me the final, like today? No one works in the lab on the weekend. I said, look, I can't sleep. I was thinking, how advanced am I? I get the notice and I'm restless. You know, why can't I be like Maharaj Parikshit, just with determination, go sit on the bank of the Ganges? So really a test. So he said, all right. So he sent one of his lab technicians in. And by noon he called me. He said, Maharaj, I have some news for you. And then apparently his child was there and distracted him. So like, he didn't talk for a minute. So the pause would mean that the result was positive. You know, I was thinking, Hare Krishna. He said, it's benign. Means it's not. It's a negative. It wasn't even anything to do with skin cancer. It was just a freckle, which maybe because of the way you wear your kurta or your chadar, it got agitated or something. It has nothing. He said, there's absolutely not one cancer cell. I'm really sorry. I said, Doc, I got 4 stitches in my back because you carved out, part of my back. Okay. He said, I'm really sorry about that. You don't have to pay for the appointment. But yeah, so I was thinking, better I keep that mood. I was thinking like that. Because I went, but I thought someday we're going to get a report, and it's not going to be negative. Everyone, at some point, we're all going to get notice of death. It may come from a medical lab, it may come because we're in a car accident, or look at my Godbrother Sahotra Prabhu. He was chanting japa. Boom. Massive cardiac arrest. He was young. I mean, when at this age we still think we're young, because old is 80. So 58 we think is young. So he's chanting, but it happened so fast that his legs were still crossed, his hand was still in his bead bag, he was still sitting on the bed when they found him. He had the heart attack Friday night, they found his body Monday morning. It had all begun to decay, but he was just in that, he had his hand in his bead bag, sitting in the bed. It happened so fast. So we're thinking, yes, I have 20 years, 30. Maybe we don't. Maybe you're going to get that notice in a routine check. Maybe you're going to have the car crash on the way to the... Maybe you're going to get the heart attack. People have heart attacks. One of the famous, athlete runners who was into mode of goodness living and vegetarianism and used to jog a lot. He had a heart attack when he was 28. So we don't know. So we should live our life like, it's our last. And so therefore when we chant, it should come from the heart. The prayer should come from the heart. We should have this sense of urgency. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. And we can gauge. Really, it's all, because Krishna is so much available in the form of his name. He's so approachable in his name. It's all centered on the name. How much we're attached to chanting the name. That when the kirtan takes place, we're not like making texts on our cell phone or playing with babies or talking to our friends or making plans. But with the kirtan, we just open our hearts. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Because just like the curtain opens, you have to immediately, here's Krishna, pay no obeisances. So when the holy name appears, is there any difference between the holy name and Krishna? No. Nama Chintamani Krishna is Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. There's no difference in the name, the fame, the form, the paraphernalia, the pastimes. So just like when the curtain opens, you're in such a mood of awe and reverence. Whenever the holy name comes into the ether, someone's chanting near you, Hare Krishna, oh Krishna. Someone's chanting back, oh Krishna. You hear a bhajan tape, oh Krishna. You have kirtan, you just jump into kirtan like the boys were doing. Girls should also dance. Prabhupada encouraged the girls to dance. Here they're very shy. That's good. But still, when there's kirtan, we just lose all sense of composure. We just give our hearts and we dance. We dance nicely, but we dance. The boys just took their boots off this morning and got a little bit into the kirtan there. We should give our heart and soul to the kirtan as Krishna is coming in the form of his name. That's how we judge our advancement. How much attraction we have to those syllables. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. That's how we judge our progress in Krishna consciousness. It's very easy. So we can follow in Kunti's footsteps like that. Unwavering devotion for the Lord through thick and thin, and constant remembrance. Although we can work towards that goal of express devotion, we should hanker. We should feel unqualified and worthy, not advanced, but that we should cultivate that burning desire. And how do you get that desire in Krishna consciousness? It's so hard to get it. You have to, really the process is twofold. What is that first? Krishna help. Well, I know the last two lines. Asadham Bhagavan Nama Srimad Vaishnava Seva. What is the first two lines? It's a verse by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. In his 100 verses glorifying Lord Chaitanya, he said, anyway, Asadham Bhagavan Nama Srimad Vaishnava Seva. He said, those who have been bitten by the serpent of the repetition of birth and death in the age of Kali, they shall get relief by the medicinal herb of Asadham Bhagavan Nama Srimad Vaishnava Sevana, particularly in Kali Yuga. How do we advance in Krishna consciousness? How do we get the perfection of Krishna consciousness? Asadham Bhagavan Nama Srimad Vaishnava Sevana. We have to chant the holy names of the Lord, Asadham Bhagavan, and Srimad Vaishnava Sevana. We have to get the association of devotees. It's a powerful combination, it's a powerful mixture. Actually, associating with devotees of the Lord is even more favorable than associating with the Lord himself. What? How is that possible? The goal is Krishna. How is it by associating with devotees we get more Krishna conscious than associating with the Lord? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, just like it's more dangerous to associate with a man who's attached to a materialistic woman than a materialistic woman herself. We're not talking about our Vaishnavis. But it's more dangerous to associate with a lusty man than it is who's attached to a woman than to a lusty woman herself. Because of that association, so much talk and jokes and medals and this and that. So in the same way, it's more advantageous to associate with a devotee who's imbued with love of God than it is to associate with Krishna himself, as for the aspiring devotee. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastha Hoy, Lava Matta Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. So, we have to associate with devotees like that. That's Krishna's mercy. Just like Uddhava, such a nice pastime of Uddhava. Uddhava is a Dwarkavasi. He's a Vaikunthavasi. He's Krishna's dear friend, he's his cousin, he's his close associate. He even looks like Krishna. Like Prabhupada said, you take on the qualities of that with which you associate. So Uddhava and Krishna are so tight, they're so close, they're almost like one soul and two bodies. They're such good friends that Uddhava, he looks like Krishna. He just doesn't have that Srivat's hair on his chest. He's so beautiful. And he has a certain relationship with Krishna. As a Dwarkavasi, kind of in that Aishwarya route. But Krishna wanted to show him the superiority of the gopis' love for himself, for Krishna. So he sent Uddhava to Vrindavan with a message for the gopis. But by doing one thing, the Lord accomplishes many. He wanted to placate the Brajavasis. It's going to be okay, don't worry about it, we're separated, but still we're still connected through love. But he also wanted Uddhava, by associating with the gopis, to see their exalted nature of their love. So he sent Uddhava to Braj, and with some messages. But at the same time to see what is the exalted nature of the love of the gopis. So when Uddhava went there, he had these kind of an official visit. So he had these messages, and he told Nanda and Yashoda. He said, he read the message of Krishna. He said, Krishna says to Nanda and Yashoda, he said, don't worry, Mata, don't worry, Pita, I'm the supreme truth, I'm the supreme pure, I'm the eternal person, everyone is dependent upon me, so don't feel that you're disconnected from me. Because everyone's dependent upon me. I'm the absolute truth. Everyone. Nitya Nityanam, Chaitanya Chaitanam, Eko Bhavanam, Yogani Ratikamam. Out of all the eternals, there's one upon whom everyone is dependent. He's fulfilling desires. So, in essence, you're connected with me. So, Nanda Yashoda, when they heard that message, they said, what is Krishna saying? Bhagavad Yashoda said, he's not the supreme pure. He would roll in the dust, and every half hour I'd have to bathe him. And he's not the supreme truth, Krishna. Who's telling you this? He would steal butter. And we would have to catch him, and he would deny it. How's he the supreme truth when he's lying to me? And Krishna's not the eternal person. He took birth from my womb. He's my little boy. I saw him grow up before my eyes. So Uddhavas are like dumbfounded. Like, who are these people? Who are these Brajabasis? They have a better understanding of Krishna than me. I thought I was bringing them a message to help them, but they're helping me understand Krishna in a different way. He said, no, try to understand. Everyone's dependent upon Krishna. Well, Yashoda started crying. This is nonsense, she said. If I didn't breastfeed him, he would die. And Uddhava was like, wow. So Uddhava said, yes, I came to tell you to stop crying, he said. I wanted to say there's no need to cry because you didn't lose anything. You're all dependent upon Krishna. But now I can see you lost a lot, so keep crying. I remember one time we were with Gouranga Maharaja. He was a great devotee, Gouranga Maharaja. No one really knew his glories, how advanced he was. One time, devotee asked the question. Gouranga Maharaja, could you explain what is the essence of this Krishna consciousness? So he said, what is the essence? What is this movement? He says, crying, 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 crying. Any other questions? Now we're crying for Maya. We have to learn to cry for Krishna. Nectar Devotion says we should all learn the art of crying for Krishna. So then, what did Uddhava do? How did he get this? How did he advance in Krishna consciousness? Not by being with Krishna, but by going with Krishna's devotees. He went to Udayagiri. They're kind of in the forest. You see, if you've been to Nandagram and you're on the hill and you look down on the right side out there about 400 meters, there's a little grove of trees. Now they cut the trees down. Anyway, there was a little kunj there. So Uddhava went to Udayagiri, and there he took a message to the gopis. Because first he met Nanda Yashoda. Then he went to the gopis. He said, my dear girls, there's all these girls, Krishna's been gone for years, they've cried their hearts out, they don't have any tears left. Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. So here comes Uddhava. Uddhava's coming. He said, my dear girls, Krishna has a message for you. This is Krishna's message. My dear gopis, you may think I've left you, but in fact I haven't really left you. I'm within your heart, and I'm in the atom of in each and every atom of the universe. How could I ever leave you? Don't cry. We're connected. I'm in your hearts. Gopi said, Krishna's treating us like we're jnanis or something, you know. We're supposed to have all this knowledge about the super soul. We're just village girls. We're not interested in this complicated philosophy. We just miss Krishna. We want to be with him again. So Uddhava, seeing how deeply they're affected by this message, he can't believe it. Suddenly a bumblebee comes and starts hovering around Srimati Radharani. And she takes him like as if he's a messenger. He said, you're a messenger too from Krishna. He said, you're just like your master. You fly from one flower to the other, never satisfied. Like Krishna, he just went from one gopi to the other. Then he left us, he abandoned us. I don't want to think of Krishna. I don't want to talk about Krishna. I don't want to remember Krishna, 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 Krishna. So what am I going? What is this divyamata, this divine madness of these people? They're always thinking of Krishna. They can never forget Krishna. They're so much in love with Krishna. I said, I want to be like them. So he was going back to Mathura. He said, I thought I could appreciate Krishna. I loved Krishna, but these people appreciate Krishna more than anyone. They have such elevated love. So in the Bhagavatam he says, let me remain here in Vrindavan. It's just as some grass, or some little plant, or a little shrub. I don't care. I don't want to be Uddhava of Dwarka. I want to be a blade of glass in Braj, so that when these gopis go out to the forest to pick flowers for Krishna, their lotus feet will step on my head. And by the dust of their lotus feet, I'll get some Braj Bhakti. Like that. So this association is essential. We hanker for this love of Krishna. We know that we can't always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna unless we have that love. We don't want to hate Krishna like Kamsa. We want to love Krishna. We don't favorably. How are we going to get it? We have to associate with the advanced devotees of the Lord. So, but Krishna's gone, gopis have gone, Prabhupada was here, but he reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. A Vaishnav dies to live, while living tries to spread the holy name around. Actually, Prabhupada describes in the Bhagavatam in a purport, he said, these great devotees, they have taken the boat of transcendental knowledge, this Bhagavatam, this Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, which deals only with Amala Purana, pure devotion to Krishna. They've read this book, they follow the instructions, they become Rasika Bhaktas, they become great devotees of the Lord. They took that boat of transcendental knowledge to the other side of the ocean, Vaikuntha. What are we going to do? We're left behind. And the Prabhupada says, no. They took the boat of transcendental knowledge and said that by their mystic power, the boat is still here on this side of the ocean, on the material side of the ocean. We can also get in the boat. We can also cross over the ocean. We have Prabhupada's purports. Prabhupada said his purports were his ecstasies. We have the verses, but we have Prabhupada's association here. This is our advanced association, Srila Prabhupada, you can say. Prabhupada said, he lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him, about his Guru Maharaj. He dedicates the Chaitanya Charitamrita to his spiritual master with that shlok. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. So if we follow very carefully in Prabhupada's footsteps, which means that we follow his instructions, we get up every morning, we go to the morning program, we see our beautiful deities, we chant Guru Vashtakam, we worship the Tulsi plant, take your pick, there's 1,000 of them here, you're blessed. We have Guru Puja, we have Bhagavatam, we chant our japa from the heart, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. We study these books. Prabhupada said you have to know these books like a lawyer knows the law books. We memorize some verses, hard as it is for our Kali Yuga brains. We memorize some of these verses of Kunti Devi, Prahlad, and we just practice. We're Rupanugas, we're followers in the footsteps. We're way, way behind, but that's okay. It means we have the shelter of so many advanced personalities. To be the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant is good. Many times removed because we have the mercy of so many devotees. We accept our humble position. We're just beginners. But we have the good fortune of having Prabhupada's shelter, and his instructions are there. And if we follow them, then in due course of time, Prabhupada, we should never think that Prabhupada exaggerated. We can all go back to Godhead. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati one time in 1934, he gave a lecture. He said, I see no reason why all my disciples cannot go back to Godhead in one lifetime. What? Yes. Just as Mahaprabhu is even more merciful than Krishna. Namo Mahabharanaya Krishna Prem Padayate. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya. This incarnation is even more merciful than Krishna. And Krishna is so merciful. Sarvadharma Parityajya. Just give up your nonsense and surrender, I'll give you full protection. But Mahaprabhu is even more merciful. He doesn't even ask for surrender. He just floods the world with the love of God. Hare Krishna. But Prabhupada is even more merciful than Lord Chaitanya, because you look how strict the society was during Lord Chaitanya's time. Mahaprabhu's female disciples, they had to offer obeisances from 300 meters. Prabhupada was very kind. He gave Gayatri. He gave Diksha. Actually, ladies were not initiated in Vedic culture. They had their pati gurus, their husbands. And by serving their husbands very nicely as devotees, as brahmanas, they became brahmanis. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati gave Diksha, Harinam Diksha, to his female disciples. And Prabhupada, out of appreciation, he said, my female disciples are doing as much as the boys. So he gave them Gayatri. You don't see the ladies performing artiks in India. Prabhupada gave Gayatri. He's even more merciful. So we have to take advantage of that mercy. We can't abuse that mercy. We have to understand the process is simple, but it's not cheap. To be very, very strict, follow Prabhupada to the letter, help Prabhupada spread this movement around the world. We have two things to do. We have to follow strictly his rules, and then we have to assist Prabhupada in spreading the Sankirtan movement. This combination is very dynamic. This is a loyal disciple who follows the instructions to the letter and helps the spiritual master in his mission of preaching Krishna consciousness. He gets some special blessings. That combination is very powerful. If we do like that, one day we'll understand these contradictions. We're speaking, I can admit very frankly, speaking without any realization. But it's there in the philosophy, and the duty of the speaker is to repeat the philosophy. But we're all praying that one day we can realize these things, because this is the goal of Krishna consciousness. Let us not be naive. The goal is to become an ecstatic lover of God. One time Prabhupada said, I'm just hoping that a few of my disciples will catch this hint of the message I'm trying to give. We're not here for anything other than becoming ecstatic lovers of God. We do that by following our spiritual masters and assisting them in their mission. Then one day these things will be revealed to us. Param gopyam apish nigdhe shishya vacham iti shruti tachtuyatam mahabhaga goloka mahimaduna. Such a nice verse by Shukdev Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. The Vedas say that to a loyal disciple one may speak the confidential secret. Therefore, O most fortunate one, now please hear the glories of Goloka. So we may not be prepared to hear so much, but we can hear in little doses, and we can hanker, we can become qualified, and then these things will be revealed. I recommend that all of you, as quickly as possible, get His Holiness Srila Maharaja's new book, Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. It's a very nice expose on Prabhupada's teachings, combined with the teachings of the Goswamis. Of that path, he makes it very clear, from Shraddha to Prema. Ado Shraddha tata sadhu sangha tabhajana kriya anartha nivritti syad nistha ruchi bhav prem. It's a very nice outline of that path. You can see where you're at on that path. Maharaj, very good student of Prabhupada's books and expert writer, realized devotee, Srila Maharaj. Read that book, because this is actually a nice summary of the teachings of Prabhupada and the Goswamis. And we should know where we're at, what's our next step, and what we're hankering for in Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada said, summarized it very nicely. Elegance is truth spoken concisely. He said, back home, back to Godhead. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Shri Radhasham Sundar ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai, Karuna Bhavan ki jai, the Scottish Yatra ki jai, United Kingdom ki jai, Iskcon United Kingdom ki jai, Worldwide Iskcon ki jai.